While his aging wife was out, he used moving boxes as an excuse to lure his rebellious daughter Sarah downstairs, then slowly opened a hidden basement door. This was the first time Sarah knew there was a secret room down there. At first she sensed no danger. After all, he was her father, but she never imagined this hidden room would become her home for years. Before Sarah could react, Don slipped back outside and locked the security door tight. Terrified, Sarah begged him to let her out, but Don completely ignored her. Then Sarah opened the box they'd brought in and found all her clothes and canned food inside. Realizing something was very wrong, she frantically tried the keypad, but after 3 failed attempts, the room suddenly lost power. Desperate to survive, Sarah called for help through the vent. But Don didn't want anyone hearing her, so he grabbed a blanket and completely blocked the vent before calmly walking away, leaving Sarah alone in the dark room. Sarah had been gone all day and her phone was still home, so her mother feared she'd gone missing and told Don to call the police. But Don told her not to worry, saying Sarah would be back that night. By the next day, Sarah was dizzy after going all day without food. Desperate to escape, she tried the security keypad again, but failed once more. As Sarah sat there devastated, she suddenly heard footsteps outside. Knowing it had to be Don, Sarah quickly hid in a corner and waited for him to open the door. She shoved him aside and rushed out. She thought she'd finally escape, but then discovered there was a second security door outside. Just like that, Don dragged Sarah back into the room and brutally abused her. By the 3rd day, her mother couldn't take it anymore and called police. But when officers came to investigate, Don shamelessly claimed Sarah had left with all her clothes and said she'd always dreamed of traveling the world. Hearing this, the officer simply listed Sarah as missing and told the family to wait for news before leaving. Meanwhile, Sarah was still screaming through the vent, but no one outside could hear a thing. By her 7th day underground, Sarah was becoming increasingly angry. The physical and emotional torment was becoming unbearable, but she remembered the boyfriend who loved her and knew she had to stay strong. Sure enough, after days without hearing from Sarah, her worried boyfriend came looking for her. Once Don learned who he was, he lied that Sarah had gone abroad with a man named Steve. Thinking Sarah had chosen another man, her boyfriend walked away heartbroken. On the 21st day of Sarah's disappearance, Don brought supplies into the hidden room, then lit a birthday candle. It was Sarah's 18th birthday, and Don had come to celebrate it. With no choice, Sarah crawled over and blew out the candle, but seconds later, Don handed her a red nightgown and told her to put it on. Afraid to anger him, Sarah obeyed and changed into it, and once again suffered his abuse. Sarah couldn't bear living this way. One day while eating canned food, she noticed the metal lid could be sharpened into a weapon. So when Don entered the room again, she hid the weapon behind her back, ready to ambush him. But Don quickly saw through her plan. Sarah's escape attempt failed, and Don punished her severely. Time passed quickly, and Sarah reached her 354th day in captivity. She was cleaning the room as usual, when suddenly her water broke. Only then did Sarah realize she was going into labor, but she had no idea what to do. Luckily, there were childbirth books in the room. With no experience, Sarah carefully read through them, then curled up in a corner and tried to give birth. After a painful scream, Sarah gave birth alone to her first child with Don, but the baby girl wasn't healthy. She was born with severe asthma and needed medication every day, yet Don couldn't care less. For years passed with Sarah still in prison. Her mother cried constantly over her disappearance, while Sarah became pregnant a second time. This time she gave birth to a boy, but he was also very weak and often got sick with fevers. By Sarah's 7th year in captivity, she gave birth to a 3rd child, but the tiny room couldn't hold 4 people. Thinking about the baby's future, Sarah begged Don to take the child outside. After thinking it over, Don agreed because it could ease his wife's suspicions and make everyone stop looking for Sarah. Early the next morning, a baby's cries came from the front door. When Sarah's mother opened it, she found a note from Sarah in the basket. Sarah claimed she was struggling financially and asked her mother to care for the newborn. Her mother was overwhelmed with joy and didn't notice another note underneath, but when Don saw it, he flew into a rage. That night he stormed into the basement and threw the red dress at Sarah. What followed was obvious. 14 years had now passed, and Sarah's oldest daughter had grown up, while Sarah was pregnant with her 4th child. But when Don looked at her oldest daughter, his eyes filled with disturbing desire. Sarah immediately sensed something was wrong and quickly pulled her daughter away because she knew exactly what kind of man Don was. Because of this, Don deliberately cut the power before leaving to punish them. Soon the rainy season arrived, and heavy rain fell for 3 straight days. That's when Sarah noticed water slowly seeping into the basement. Realizing this might be her chance to escape, Sarah immediately moved a cabinet over and started digging with a spoon. The ceiling had softened from the rain, so Sarah soon dug a large hole through it. Excited, she flashed a light outside for help, and a neighbor happened to notice something strange. But unbelievably, the neighbor told Don what he'd seen, and because of that, Sarah suffered her worst abuse yet. Even worse, she lost the baby she was carrying. When Don saw the baby hadn't survived, his expression didn't change at all. He simply picked the baby up and buried it beneath a tree. This was Sarah's 18th year in captivity, and Don was now at risk of losing his job. With no source of income, he could no longer support the 3 people below. So to ease his burden, Don came up with a horrifying idea. Late that night, he connected a hose to the room's vent and attached the other end to his car's exhaust. The heartless man planned to use the exhaust fumes to kill all 3 people in the room. He thought the plan would work, but his younger son heard the noise and came outside, forcing Don to abandon the plan and claim he was fixing the car. By Sarah's 20th year underground, her oldest daughter's asthma had gotten much worse, and even her medicine no longer worked. Knowing her daughter could die, Sarah dropped to her knees before Don and begged him to take her to a hospital. She warned that without treatment, her daughter wouldn't survive. After hearing Sarah's plea, Don finally agreed. After 20 years trapped underground, Sarah finally breathed fresh air again. Luckily, treatment came in time, and her daughter was out of danger. But then, the doctor couldn't find any record of the girl, so he went to Don for more information. Sarah now had a chance to ask the doctor for help, but she couldn't find the courage until she spotted a police officer down the hall, and finally made up her mind. While Don wasn't looking, she deliberately spilled water on the paperwork, and when Don went to get another copy, she stood up and walked toward the officer. But Don noticed her and realized something was wrong, so he quickly followed her. But Sarah had already reached the police officer. Don tried to casually walk away, but the police quickly went after him. After 20 long years, Don was finally brought to justice and faced life in prison. When the children were rescued from the basement, Sarah's mother couldn't believe her eyes. There were so many people down there. As life slowly returned to normal, the children ran into the yard and played happily, while Sarah sat quietly on a bench, enjoying the feeling of freedom. Then suddenly, she heard a motorcycle approaching. Her devoted boyfriend had never married in those 20 years, and had always waited for news of Sarah. Now Sarah had finally come back. By the end of the story, the two rekindled their relationship, and lived happily together again. And that's where the movie ends. Girl in the Basement is a thriller inspired by true events. It tells the story of a girl trapped underground for more than 20 horrifying years, and how she finally finds the courage to escape and regain her freedom. This isn't just a thriller, but also a story of courage and hope. It reminds me that no matter how hard life gets, if you keep fighting, there is always hope. Sarah's story will always inspire me to face life's challenges.